I was having a hard time believing what I was seeing right in front of me. I checked and rechecked, and then checked once more, and there it was, an exact match. The same numbers on my lottery ticket were on the screen. My first instinct was to run downstairs and announce the news to my family. I was halfway down the stairs when I realized that it was a bad idea. We are 8 siblings, and my mom would just take the money herself and maybe distribute it with the rest of the family. This is my money, and I am not going to let anyone have it. It was at that moment I made the decision to run away at 12 years old. Hi, my name is Lizzie, and before I tell you what happened afterward and how my entire plan backfired, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. It all started when I saw a dream a couple of weeks ago. It was one of the most random dreams, and after waking up, I only remembered a string of numbers. For some reason, I couldn't get those numbers out of my head. A few days later, I had forgotten all about it and was walking home from school when I saw the lottery signs outside one of the local supermarkets. The numbers reminded me of my dream, and in one of the most impulsive moments of my life, I rushed home, emptied my piggy bank, which was rather heavy by this point, and visited my friend across the street. I knew I had to be of legal age in order to buy lottery tickets, and I only had one friend who would fit that criteria. Meg was in her 20s, and we had become good friends after she hired me to walk her dogs. Meg isn't one of those lively adults. In fact, sadness radiates from her all the time. Whenever we talk, she is always warning me about not trusting anyone and to always put myself first. She would go even as far as saying, "Don't do anything good for anyone because they'll always stab you in the back. That's just how life is." I didn't mind talking to her because, well, she looked pretty cool. She would smoke cigarette after cigarette and try to impart her wisdom on me. I knew if there's anyone who'd help me with this, it would be her. I left my money with her and wrote the numbers down on a paper for her to fill. For the next couple of days, I caught myself daydreaming in school. It didn't help matters that summer vacations were almost here and my friends couldn't stop talking about all the places they were planning to visit. Unfortunately, we won't be going anywhere this summer since my mom's leaves were denied and she was needed at work. She promised me that she would take us to Universal Studios, and then she broke that promise, and I couldn't help but feel angry because of it. After school, I rushed home and looked up the site where I could check the winning numbers, and there it was, right at the top. I was having a hard time believing what I was seeing right in front of me. I checked and rechecked, and then checked once more, and there it was, an exact match. The same numbers on my lottery ticket were on the screen. My first instinct was to run downstairs and announce the news to my family. I was halfway down the stairs when I realized that it was a bad idea. We are 8 siblings, and my mom would just take the money herself and maybe distribute it with the rest of the family. This is my money, and I am not going to let anyone have it. As I made my decision to run away from home, my mom called us downstairs. "Dinner's ready, kids. Come to the kitchen." Mom's voice carried throughout the house. Dinner was like usual in our house. Everyone was speaking all at once. 2 of the twin sisters were fighting over the last piece of meatball. One brother was kicking everyone under the table, and Mom and Dad were just making sure everyone was eating their dinner. I hated this racket, and I hated sharing everything with my siblings. Why couldn't I have something all for myself? Why can't I just go to a place with peace and quiet? I muttered to myself. But then I smiled, realizing that I could finally do what I want and when I wanted. The next day after school, I went to Meg's place, and together, we collected the amount in a lump sum. I hid it in my backpack. It was so much cash, and I couldn't believe it all belonged to me. As I went home, I sat on my bed and smelled all that fresh money. I could feel the excitement flowing from me as I thought of my upcoming adventure. "Lizzie!" my older sister called out, and I quickly hid the cash under my mattress. She entered the room seconds later and stopped short when she looked at my face. "What were you doing?" she asked suspiciously. "Nothing. I was just about to do my homework," I replied nonchalantly and reached for my backpack. That night, I went to Meg's and asked her to book me a flight to Orlando, Florida. It's where Universal Studios is, and I decided that I was going to go alone. I felt my spirits lifting even more as Meg gave me an encouraging smile. "You're a smart girl, Lizzie. I wish I had your courage and luck when I was your age. Remember, everyone is greedy," she said. When she booked the flight, I paid her in cash. Imagine my surprise when Meg asked me for more. "I am helping you out with everything. You need to give me some portion of that money," she said. "That's not fair," I replied angrily. "Oh, really? Do you want me to tell your parents what you've been up to lately?" She threatened me right back. I was shocked and angry, but I had no choice, so I reluctantly gave her more. My flight was at 6 in the morning, so I quietly packed all my stuff at night and hid my bags in the shed outside the house. At 3 a.m., I got ready and I was sneaking out of my house when I heard my older sister. "Lizzie, are you out of your mind? Where are you going?" she asked, confusion all over her face. As she walked towards me, I panicked and picked up a vase on my window and hurled it at her head. I just wanted her to back off, but it ended up hitting her in the head and she dropped like a stone. I jumped towards her, wanting to make sure she was all right, but realizing that this was also my only chance to escape. After taking a final glance at my sister collapsed on the floor, I turned around and fled. I finally breathed a sigh of relief when I got on the bus. However, my relief was short-lived when a few stops later, a cop climbed aboard the bus and decided to take the empty seat next to me. Instantly, I grew rigid with worry. If the cop were to become suspicious, all my planning would go down the drain.
"Where are you off to, young lady?" the cop asked good-naturedly.
I am heading to my aunt's house for the weekend," I replied.
"That's great."
The cop smiled, but I noticed him taking in all my bags. I gulped nervously as the cop opened his mouth to say something else, and just then the bus stopped. I realized it was my stop. As I stood up to leave, the friendly cop waved at me.
"Stay safe, young lady,"
he advised with a smile. I waved back and got off the bus and headed towards the airport. I was mesmerized by the glamour and happening city, so unlike my boring hometown. The first thing I did was book a room in a rundown motel. It was disgusting and shady, but they didn't ask me where my parents were, so it all worked out. I stashed all my bags, hid the money under a loose floorboard, and headed to my first destination, Disneyland. Excitement and adrenaline filled me as I joined the ticket line at the entrance. Sadly, they didn't let me enter and told me that I needed to be accompanied by someone 14 years of age or older. Disappointed, I turned away from the gates and strolled the city without any real destination in mind when I spotted a nice little restaurant. Thankfully, no one questioned me there, and for the first time, I ordered every single thing I wanted on the menu. By the time I was done eating, I couldn't even move. With much struggle, I walked back to my motel and noticed a group of older kids hanging around. They must have been around 17 or 18. They all seemed to be having such a good time, and I couldn't even enter Disneyland. How was I ever going to get into Universal Studios? As I was just standing there, feeling sorry for myself, one of the girls caught my eye.
"Come here, girl,"
she called out, and everyone turned to me. At first, I hesitated a little, but then I took in their friendly faces and decided to join them. "Hi, I'm Lizzie," I introduced myself.
"Hey, Lizzie, who are you here with?"
one of the boys asked me. For some reason, I knew these guys wouldn't report me, so I decided to tell the truth. "No one. I flew here alone from Georgia," I said with a shrug.
"Really?"
one of them exclaimed in surprise.
"That's actually pretty cool. How old are you?"
the first girl asked me. "I am 12, I replied shyly.
"That's impressive. You have to be the coolest 12-year-old I ever met. On a vacation all by yourself?"
the girl exclaimed with a pat on my back.
"For sure. What did you see in Orlando so far?" the boy asked.
"Well, I wanted to go to Disneyland, but they wouldn't let me in alone since I am a minor and all," I answered.
"That's nothing to worry about. We'll help get you in," the girl offered.
"Really?" I asked in surprise.
"Sure. What are friends for?"
the girl assured me with a smile. True to their words, the next day, we all headed to Disneyland and I had the best time of my life there. I couldn't help but notice all the families there, and for some strange reason, it made me miss my own family and my little brothers and sisters. They would have loved to be here. Shaking off the sadness, I decided to thank my new friends with a treat. I took them all to the same restaurant I went to yesterday.
"Lizzie, you are the best. You have to come with us to this party tomorrow,"
one of my friends said. "I have never been to a party before," I told her honestly. "All the more reason to join us. Come on, you can't say no," she insisted, and eventually I agreed. The next day, I went to the party and drank for the first time. At another party, I tried smoking for the first time. That night, we even broke into a house, and I almost got myself arrested. It was scary and exciting all at the same time. I finally felt like a grown-up who could finally do whatever they pleased. I could buy whatever I wanted and hang around with cool friends that love to party and enjoy life. I made sure to repay my new friends whenever I could by offering to pay for things like cigarettes, cab rides, and other small expenses. By the end of the week, we were all exhausted from partying and sightseeing, so we decided to hang around at the motel. Someone had bought drinks, and one of them handed me a glass. As I was drinking and listening to everyone around me talk, I felt this strange, fuzzy feeling, like I was here, but not here. The next moment, the world around me begins to spin, then blur, and finally goes all black. When I finally gain consciousness, I find myself tied to the chair in my motel room. Instantly, I panic, but then I see my friends around me and calm down. "What happened, guys? Untie me, will you?" I asked them. When none of them moved, I looked up at them in confusion. "Of course, we'll untie you, Lizzie. But first, you need to tell us where you're hiding all your money," the girl said. It took me a moment to get over the shock and deal with the situation at hand. "I don't know what you guys are talking about," I replied, but they were not listening to me. 2 of them were searching the bathroom and the rest of them were going through my bags, my clothes, and anything else they could get their hands on. "Tell us where it is and we'll be out of here," the girl said. I stayed quiet but made the mistake of glancing at the floor where my money was hidden, and she instantly noticed that quick glance. "Look here," she told the others, and I watched in horror as they lifted up the loose floorboard and grabbed my cash. They high-fived and celebrated before turning to me. "Thanks, Lizzie. You are truly the best friend one could ask for," my fake friend said mockingly. They all laughed at their own joke and left my room as I sat crying in the chair, but not before they also gagged me. For the next few hours, I tried to untie myself, but I couldn't. I feared I was going to die here alone in this chair and my family wouldn't even know. Suddenly, I missed my mom and dad and my siblings, what I would give to be with them once again. I was exhausted and thirsty and felt like I was going to pass out again when I heard loud voices from outside. I tried to call out to them, but I doubted they could hear my muffled shouts. Then I heard the beautiful sound of someone turning in the key and the door flew open. Cops stood at the door and stared at me in shock before getting into action. "You'll be all right, kid, don't worry," said one kind female cop as she untied me. The minute my hands were free, I hugged her tightly and started crying. "How did you know I was here?" I asked. "Do you remember the cop who sat next to you on the bus? He followed you to the airport and feared for your safety, so he notified us. A few hours later, your parents reported you missing, so we started searching for you immediately," the lady cop explained. "They took all my money. The kids who were staying here at the motel," I told them hurriedly.
"Can you tell us what they looked like? What kind of vehicle did they drive?"
the other cop inquired. I spent the next few minutes telling them everything I could about those teenagers. The kind cop told me that she had dispatched a team and that they were looking for those kids. They helped me pack my things and drove me to the airport with strict instructions. As soon as I landed, the cop from the bus would be waiting for me.
"Did you have fun at your aunt's house, young lady?"
he asked with a smile, and I looked down, embarrassed.
"It's all right. Now come on, your family is worried about you,"
he said, and motioned for me to follow him. I have to admit, I was never so happy to go back home. When we neared the house, I could see my parents on the porch waiting for me, all my brothers and sisters behind them. My mom was crying and I jumped out of the car and into her arms before the car had even stopped. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry," I cried and apologized at the same time. "I'm just glad you're back home safely, Lizzie. Besides, it isn't me you should be apologizing to," my mom said and stepped aside as my sister came forward. She had a bandage wrapped around her head, but she was smiling. "Oh no," I gasped as a stab of guilt shot through my body. "Don't worry, Lizzie. I have already claimed a percentage from your lottery money for this headache," she teased. "Honestly, you could have had it all, but sadly, all of it's gone now," I told them sadly.
"No, it isn't. The good cops were able to track down your friends and get your money back. They are facing charges, by the way,"
my dad said with a wink. "Does that mean we got all the money back?" I asked in surprise. "Yes, and guess where we're going, Lizzie?" my 5-year-old sister asked as she jumped up and down in excitement. "Where?" I humored her. "To Disneyland," she shouted, and I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. As we all went inside the house, I looked back and saw Meg across the street shaking her head at me as if disappointed. For the first time since I had met her, she didn't look so cool anymore. She just looked sad and alone.
Hi, I'm Apple, and I just started working as a secretary at a big company. I was thinking about how great this job was compared to my old babysitting job. Gosh, I didn't miss changing all those stinky diapers. One time, I was emptying that family's trash, and the bag burst open, and the diapers full of poop went everywhere. It was so disgusting. And that's when the idea came to me. Why did people not reuse diapers? What if there was a diaper delivery service? You could order clean diapers, someone would come pick up the dirty ones, and you'd never have to deal with cleaning them yourself. Genius. And imagine if there was an app for it. It was a brilliant idea. So I sat and wrote a whole business proposal for it and called it Diaper Daddy. I told my boss about it the next day, and you won't believe what he said to me. "Kaylee, did I ask you for your ideas?" "No, I didn't. You've been hired specifically to do whatever I ask of you, and right now I'm asking you not to pretend that you have a brain for marketing, because you don't. Got it?" I thought he'd at least think it was a good idea. The next day, I saw the CEO and my boss having a meeting in the glass meeting room next to my desk. On the projector was my proposal. I couldn't believe it. It was my idea. He'd stolen my Diaper Daddy app idea. The whole time he was presenting, he kept looking at the CEO and smiling. It was sickening to watch. He was such a suck-up, and the CEO loved everything about the idea. After the meeting, he emailed him straight away and offered him a $10 million deal if he could create the app and get it up and running within a month. I sat there flabbergasted. That $10 million deal should have been mine. I knew my boss probably assumed I'd freak out and ask him why he'd taken my idea, but I decided to do something else instead. Something he wouldn't be expecting. The next day, the CEO had arranged for an app development team to come in and talk about the diaper deal. I told my boss the meeting was scheduled for 1:30 p.m., when actually it was scheduled for 1 p.m. It was one of our colleagues' birthdays that day, and I'd brought in 2 giant helium-filled balloons. 5 minutes before the meeting, I decided it'd be fun if we inhaled some of the helium. I knew my boss was always up for a laugh, so I gave him some too. After he'd inhaled it all, I saw the look of horror cross his face when he noticed the app team arriving. "Oops, my bad," I said. "The meeting is actually now." In the meeting, my boss stood up to introduce his idea, and as he spoke, his voice came out all high-pitched and squeaky like Mickey Mouse. The CEO looked horrified, and the whole app team burst out laughing. Then he whispered in my ear, begging me to explain the idea, but then I said, "What idea are you talking about?" Even though my boss was embarrassed, he couldn't control his laughter, even when he tried to stop. I sat there almost peeing myself with laughter at how brilliant this was. Afterwards, my boss came marching out of the meeting room and went straight to me and screamed, "You're fired." He said he'd never been so humiliated in all his life and that I was to leave the building right now. I told my boss, "You'll regret this," and threw whatever was on my desk into a box I found on the side and headed home. First, he'd stolen my idea, and now he'd fired me? What a horrible man. I took my stuff out of the box and saw something I recognized straight away. It was my boss's phone. But what was it doing in this box? I must have put it there by accident when I swiped the desk clean. Of course, like every secretary out there, I knew my boss's passwords. I glanced over my shoulder almost as if I thought my boss would suddenly appear. I slid the screen up and almost peed my pants for the second time that day. His screensaver was a My Little Pony photo. Maybe his daughter did that, I thought. But then I reminded myself he didn't have a daughter. I clicked onto the gallery to see what other photos he had, and just as I did, the phone started to vibrate. Someone was calling. It was his mom, and she was named Mommy Dearest. I almost choked. This was too good. I answered but didn't say anything. "Where is my sweet potato? Hello? Are you deaf? It's after 6 p.m. now. Hurry home or you'll be sent to bed without dessert." I had to hang up quickly for fear that she'd hear me laughing. Who was my boss? All of a sudden, he felt like a complete stranger to me. I mean, he's like 50 and lives with his mom. I started flicking through his messages and started reading his conversations with his mom. "Mom, your room stinks and your bubble bath is ready. If you don't come home now, I'll tell your papa about your pony order that just arrived. Also, I told you to stop buying these damn toys. You're a big boy now." Me, "Never again, Mama, I promise." So weird. What a loser he was. And then I saw something absolutely unbelievable. In his gallery, there was a whole album of photos called Me and My Soulmate. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I tried to open the album, but it was locked. Damn. The next day, I woke up early and went to work. Sure, I'd been fired, but that wasn't going to stop me. I walked into the office and everyone stared in shock. "Yeah, Kaylee's back, folks. Stare all you like," I thought. My boss looked up and asked me, "What on earth do you think you're doing here?" Instead of responding, I just flashed his phone, winked at him, and took my old seat. Once everyone had calmed down, I turned to him and said, "Hey, pony boy, I'd like a latte with almond milk, please, and a blueberry muffin." And then I watched as his face turned beetroot red. This was priceless. He ignored me, so I spoke up again. "Hey, pony boy, I'm talking to you. Get me a latte now. Or would you rather I gave Mommy Dearest a call, 5 minutes later, there was a latte in my hands and a delicious blueberry muffin. Wow, is this what it felt like to be the boss? I was taking a sip when he came right up to me and whispered into my ear for me to give him the phone right now, or he'd report me. I almost spat out my latte. Report me to who exactly? I just gave him a smirk and turned back to my laptop. After an hour, I decided I needed to flex my muscles a bit more. I told him we're swapping desks, and then when he didn't react, I just started moving my stuff to his desk. He tried to object, so at the top of my voice, I said, "Sweet potato, I'm warning you." And suddenly, he started moving things off his desk at lightning speed. This was amazing. Call me boss. I told him. And then at lunchtime, I asked him to go buy me lunch. I ordered 10 pizzas, a dozen donuts, and made him go collect it all and bring it to my desk. Watching him scurry along like my little slave was such a great moment. He was my secretary now. I was officially Boss Kaylee. He tried so hard to get his phone back, even offering me the $10 million deal that was rightfully due. But I wasn't done having fun. I watched over the next few days as he started panicking about getting the app up and running. Every time he had a meeting with the CEO, I'd schedule a delivery from Amazon to be delivered to the meeting room. I could see the CEO getting annoyed, and on the 4th day of this happening, he asked him to open the package. I think he thought it would be something for the app, but when my boss pulled out a pink, sparkly My Little Pony, I literally almost died laughing. I could hear my boss mumbling something about how it was a gift for his niece. Yeah, right. By the end of the week, I was really having fun being his boss. I even made him order fresh flowers for my desk every day. Throughout the whole week, I tried every password imaginable, but I still couldn't access the locked album. And then I realized it was tied to his Google account, and I could just click Forgot Password and be asked a security question. Of course, the question would be, what is your favorite character? So I asked him, so which pony is the best pony in your opinion? And then he just told me. I could barely contain my excitement. Princess Twilight Sparkle. I typed it in, changed his password, and then I was in. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were hundreds of photoshopped photos. All of them were of my boss and our CEO. In one photo, they were riding atop a My Little Pony, flying through rainbows and clouds. And then there were photos of them at the beach and on a mountain, all with My Little Ponies, and all photoshopped, of course. Oh my gosh, I was stunned. So my boss was in love with our CEO? No way. I didn't even realize how much I was laughing. But my boss asked me what was so funny, and then he realized, and he lunged for his phone. But I quickly pulled it away. I know your secret, I said, grinning. Literally within the blink of an eye, he'd packed up all his stuff and left. He didn't look embarrassed as he left the office. He actually looked hurt, and I swear I saw him crying as he walked out. This whole time, I'd wanted to be the boss, and yet now, I suddenly felt bad. I used his phone to track down his address and then jumped in a taxi. In the taxi, I started reading some of the messages between him and the CEO, and it was clear they liked each other. When I got to his house, his mom let me in, and I found him curled up on his bed crying like a little kid. Wow, he was really upset about all of this. When he saw me, he told me to go away, but I went over to him, and when I sat down, he started crying even more, saying for years he's been in love with the CEO, but what's the point? It's not like he would ever love him back. Suddenly, I found myself saying, I'm sure the CEO liked him too, and that I'd seen the way he looked at him. There was definitely love in his eyes. I apologized to him for everything I'd done, and he said it didn't matter, that nothing mattered if he couldn't be with the CEO. Just before I left, I texted the CEO from his phone, asking him to meet for a drink to celebrate the deal, and then I put his phone next to his bed and said goodbye. I waited outside the bar for a whole hour